Chapter 15. Augie and I sat at the very back of the bus. Between us, inside a large burlap bag tied at the top, was the snake. The bus was crowded and there were a few people standing. A couple of people had eyed us, annoyed that we were taking up a seat with our luggage. But I just didn't like the thought of the heavy snake moving around inside the bag on my lap. Besides, as long as it was left alone and undisturbed, it wasn't going to move much, and that was good. I had a pretty good idea how the other passengers and the driver would react if they found we had a 6-foot snake on board. I couldn't believe how the snake reacted when the guy grabbed it, Augie said. It was a little wild, wasn't it? I agreed. The snake had put up a good fight. The salesman had gone into the pen to get it, and the boa had twisted and twirled and fought, trying to first get away from him, and then to get out of his grasp. He had carried it out, and then it took both Augie and me to help him put it into the burlap sack. I wasn't expecting it to be like that. I just thought that all boas were like Bogart, sort of easygoing and relaxed. He said that since it hadn't been handled very much, it wasn't used to people. It certainly wasn't like Bogart at all, and I even had second thoughts about buying it. But he explained that it would become a lot better when it was being held all the time. He said not to worry. I was worried, but I believed him. Augie stood up and grabbed the pull cord that ran above the windows. He tugged on it and a bell rang to signal to the driver that we wanted out at the next stop. I got up too and grabbed the burlap sack. I felt the weight and struggled to lift it while moving between the people, holding onto the poles, trying to fight against the rocking and rolling of the bus. "Excuse me," I said as I bumped against a woman who was rushing to take my seat. "You should be more careful," she scolded as she squeezed by me and plopped down. "I'm sorry. She bumped into you," Augie said. "She should be apologizing to you. Watch your manners, young man," she said sharply. I would have watched yours if you had any," Augie snapped back. "You're just lucky this is our stop, or I'd show you what's in the bag." "Augie, come on," I pleaded. I had already made my way to the steps of the back doorway, and the bus was slowing down. Augie chuckled and joined me on the step as the bus came to a stop, and the door popped open. I practically jumped out onto the sidewalk, with Augie right on my heels. As the bus started to pull away, I could see the woman scowling at us through the back window. Augie brought his hand up to his mouth and with dramatic flair blew her a kiss. Her expression changed to shock and then anger. "You shouldn't have done that," I said. "Why not? She was rude." "But we could have got in trouble." "Trouble? What was she going to do? Jump off the bus and chase us down?" "It's no big deal. We have more important things to figure out. Like, have you figured out where you're going to keep the snake?" "Not exactly." "Well, we have to think of something. Could you just leave it in the burlap bag for the weekend?" "Nope." "And could you give me a hand with this? It's heavy," I said. "Sure." Augie grabbed a corner of the bag, relieving me of some of the weight. It wouldn't be good for the snake to be in a bag all weekend. I was also thinking that it might be able to work its way out somehow, I said. "I'm going to have to build something." "Like what?" "My father has lots of wood in the basement, and he has all sorts of tools. I've made most of the pens in my room," I said. "And you can build something in the next hour or so?" "Well, I have the rest of the day, and you could help, and..." Then I remembered that Augie had to be home within the next hour because he had to go out with his family. "Do you think you could skip going out with your family?" I asked. I could really use another pair of hands. Augie was next to useless with a saw or hammer, but what I really wanted, more than his assistance in building, was his company. I didn't want to be alone with the snake. It was big, bigger than I'd ever imagined we'd get, and I was feeling unnerved. Believe me, I wish I could stay, but I can't. It's special. My father is even closing down the store 3 hours early. "Where are you going that's so important?" I asked. "There's this thing happening at the synagogue." "At the what?" "The synagogue. Our church." "But it's Saturday," I said. "Why are you going to a church on a Saturday? Is somebody getting married?" "We always go on Saturdays," Augie said. "No, you don't. Your father's store is always open Saturdays, and you're with me most of the time." "That's when we are supposed to go. You know, my people." "You have people?" I asked. This was getting more confusing. "No, of course not. I mean, people that are the same religion as me." "What religion is that?" I asked. "You don't know?" "No," I said, shaking my head. "That's why I asked." "My name is Levy. Augie Levy." "I know your name." "Well, it's just, that's a Jewish name. I'm Jewish. My family is Jewish." "How could you not know that?" "I don't know. It just never came up. You never mentioned it." "I just thought you'd know. We've been friends for 3 years," he said. "I know how long we've been friends. I just didn't know what religion you were." "Sometimes you amaze me," he said. He had that tone of voice he used when he thought I'd done or said something stupid. "Big deal," I said, defending myself. "I bet you don't know what religion I am." "Sure I do." He said, You're Not Jewish. I didn't ask you what I wasn't. What am I? I don't know, he admitted sheepishly. I didn't even know you went to church. I don't. But if I did, I'd go to the one at the end of my street. So that means you're Presbyterian. But if you don't go, how can you be anything? Augie asked. I've been before. When? He asked. A while ago, I admitted, looking down at the ground. When I was small. And you used to go a lot? Not a lot, just once. Augie burst into laughter. You've only been to church once? Compared to you, I'm downright religious. We sometimes go to synagogue twice a year. And it wasn't even my idea to go in the first place. My father said it would be good for me, so he sent me. And what happened? Augie asked. They put all us kids in the basement. We had to go to Sunday school. More school? I knew by the tone of Augie's voice that he was shocked. The thought of going to school even 5 days a week was more than he could bear. There was a teacher, and she was explaining about Jesus and stuff. It was awful. Why? You always do well in school, Augie said. Not this one. What happened? It was crowded, and we were sitting on the floor, and it was hot, really hot. And I didn't know anybody, and when it was almost over, they gave us chocolate milk to drink. Warm chocolate milk. As I said the words, I could almost taste that sour, warm chocolate milk in my mouth and feel it going into my gut and churning all around. I still don't know what's so bad about that, Augie said. I threw up. In church. On the minister. Augie shrieked with laughter and almost dropped his end of the bag. I'm glad you find it so funny. I do, he exclaimed. Even you have to admit, it's funny. Well, Augie pretended to throw up and I started to laugh along with him. Okay, so it's funny, I admitted as we came up to my house. And you know, to this day, I've never been back to church or drunk chocolate milk. Augie started to laugh even harder. If you're almost through laughing, maybe we can go inside. You wait on the porch with the snake. Are you going to put Candy away? Augie asked. That and find out if my sister's home. How come? She's not crazy about snakes. If she's home, we have to sneak it in. Sneak in 50 pounds worth of boa constrictor, Augie said in amazement, gesturing to the burlap sack. If you don't think we can do it, you can always take the snake home to your place, I suggested. You've got to be, Augie paused. You are joking, right? Of course. Wait here. I unlocked the door and started to turn the handle. I heard Candy begin to howl. The barking got louder, and I could hear the pounding of her feet on the floor as she reached the door before I could even finally open it. It's okay, girl. It's just me, I said to her as I squeezed in. She leapt up on me, and I grabbed her collar with one hand while I scratched her behind the ear with the other. I'm home, I called out as I dragged Candy down the hall. Hello? There was no answer. I went into the kitchen. There was a note taped to the fridge. Gone grocery shopping. Be back by 2:30. Dad. My father not being home meant less explaining to do. Once an animal was actually in the house, Dad never complained. But it also meant that I didn't have him around to give me advice about the pen I was going to build. He was a carpenter and an expert with wood and tools and building things. Then again, I only needed it to work for a couple of days, so how good did it have to be? I pulled and pushed Candy into the living room. I motioned for her to jump up on the Chesterfield, which she did willingly. She never needed a second invitation to get on the furniture. I then closed the door behind me as I left. I hurried to the front door where Augie and the snake were waiting. What took you so long? Augie demanded. I was only gone for a couple of minutes. It seemed longer than that. I didn't like being alone with the snake. It started moving around. A lot. I looked down at the sack sitting on the floor of the porch. The bag was undulating and quivering as the snake moved around inside. I'm just glad you're keeping it at your house, Augie said. I didn't answer. Up until now, I hadn't even thought about the snake being anywhere else. Not that there was any place else to keep it, but now I didn't feel so sure about the whole thing. It was a snake, a big snake. Maybe not big enough to hurt me, well, at least not kill me, but it could kill other things in my house. Things like my squirrels or one of the cats. And a 6-foot boa constrictor could easily overpower a small dog, even a dog as mean as Candy. What had I gotten myself into? Did I really want a 6-foot boa constrictor in my house? We'd better hurry up, Augie said before I could say something. He grabbed the bag, picked it up, and walked into the house. Are we going up to your room? Nope, the basement. And is your dog locked away someplace so I can walk to the basement without getting bit? Augie asked. You're okay, I reassured him. She's behind closed doors. As we moved down the hall, Candy started barking loudly and scratching furiously against the door, like she was trying to dig her way through. What have I ever done to that dog to make her hate me like that? Augie asked. Nothing. She hates everybody. Come on. I switched on the lights and started down the basement stairs. The bare light bulbs hanging down from the ceiling cast a dim glow. I ducked under the first beam. Watch your head, I called back to Augie. The basement ceiling was really, really low. My father once explained to me that the basement had been dug after the house was already built, and they didn't want to go down very far. The floor was made of uneven concrete, rutted and buckling in places, chipped and missing in others to reveal the dirt underneath. The walls were also made of porous concrete, and shelves lined most of the walls. We had to use the shelves to store everything because we couldn't leave anything on the floor. When it rained too hard, the water running into the sewer in front of our house backed up through the drain in the floor and ran into our basement. Then, until it all flowed back out through the drain, our basement was filled with water. Sometimes it took a few hours, sometimes a lot longer. Just put the snake down over there, I said to Augie. He put the bag down on the floor. We have to build something big enough to hold the snake, but small enough to fit in my room. Not to mention strong enough to keep the snake inside. Can you imagine if it got out of the box, Augie said. Let's not even joke about that. Can you get me some wood from over there in the corner? Sure, what do you need? A couple of pieces of 2x4 and one of the big pieces of plywood for starters. Augie went to get the wood and went to get the tools from the workbench. And I went to get the tools from the workbench. I'd need a hammer, nails, and a saw. And of course, some idea of what I was going to build.